Welcome to the Startup Leader Show, where we learn lessons from startup founders and executives. I am your host, Lisa Dreher, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest for today, Mehrdad Pakmehr. He is the co-founder and CEO of ControlX. Welcome to the show, Mehrdad.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Maybe you can start by giving us a little bit of background on yourself and ControlX.
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, I'm the co-founder of ControlX. We have started this business about a couple of years ago. Essentially, what I'm doing is mostly conceptualizing, developing, strategizing various R&D projects in controls and autonomy. We Before ControlX, I was a co-founder of another startup focusing on optical sensing and its application for autonomous systems. In the past 20 years, I've worked with most of the relevant government agencies like Department of Defense, NASA, NSF, starting from my PhD period at Georgia Tech. And we have done a lot of work dealing with various problems that the Department of Defense is dealing with. I've been kind of doing this kind of work successfully with DoD mostly. At ControlX, our focus is designing and developing control systems, autonomous systems, and we're mostly focused on developing autonomous systems for aerospace applications. So there are four dominant areas that you have been working in, starting with developing control systems for new and emerging propulsion systems like hypersonic engines, for example. We have been working on solving some control problems with applications to hypersonics, like developing relevant technologies that will be useful for future hypersonic transportation aircraft, for example. And then, of course, we have been involved with developing flight control system for aircraft, mostly unmanned. And then recently, we're also been working with Space Force for developing control systems with application for in-space assembly and manufacturing, like ISAM or OSAM systems. So at ControlX, we're basically passionate about creating more autonomous, dynamical, and cyber-physical platforms to perform more complicated operations on Earth or in space.
Fantastic. Wow. There are so many things I want to talk more about that in what you mentioned there. So maybe we can jump into some questions and you can talk a little bit more about some of the work that you're doing. One of the things that I really want to learn from you is that just in your experience in developing the business, ControlX, and maybe some of the businesses even before that, what have you found are the biggest keys to your success so far?
So we're kind of still having a long way to go. But besides the usual factors like, I don't know, having the right business plan and having enough funding and being well structured and being customer centric, for us, I think the most important factor was basically being able to find the right problem, the problem that has enough impact, and being passionate about solving it, and basically having a passion to constantly learn and adapt to the business environment and the market. Like, for example, when we entered this area, or maybe when I entered the startup activity about like 8, 10 years ago, there were considerable differences in systems that people were focusing on. Today, you're having like much more different focuses, not completely different, but you know what I'm saying. It's basically dynamic environment with new things coming on, with the advancements of technology, and also all the emerging markets that coming up. Like, for example, 10 years ago, maybe they were not so much focused on developing new technologies for space, but right now space is becoming like one dominant area. people want to go to moon, to Mars, and there's a need for a lot of new technologies to be there. So for us, yeah, constant learning and adaptability maybe are the most important aspect. Plus, basically focusing on the right problem, the problem with the most impact.
Mm-hmm. Right. How did you determine that big impact solution or problem?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So, from my own perspective, I mean, I usually tend to focus on the areas that I know will be dominant probably in 20 years. Like, for example, being in space, in operating in space, I don't know, creating facilities on other planets, on orbit, uh, is going to drive like a lot of like market sectors, and also create a lot of opportunities. So the way that I chose them is besides the general umbrella of developing autonomous systems that will be one of the most important areas that a lot of new technologies are needed. Like the four areas that I mentioned previously, the propulsion systems going to be important because you need new engines with new capabilities to move your vehicles. Hypersonics is going to be important because like you want to go to the next generation of transportation systems. Just imagine that having a hypersonic transportation aircraft that can move you from anywhere on ground to any other point in a matter of hours, in a couple of hours. So yeah, that's the way that I was looking at them. There's a little bit of a personal experience and also maybe some intuition. Space, as I mentioned them, and aircraft systems. There's a lot of activities right now going on, creating new like drones, creating like urban air mobility. People want to have like autonomous taxis, air taxis, and all of that. These are the technology areas that here in Silicon Valley I see a lot of activities happening. So you look at the most dynamic environments that are pushing these boundaries, and also some personal experience or maybe intuition kind of guided us to move towards these areas mostly. So.
Excellent. What have been some of the most valuable business lessons that you've learned over the years?
Um, so I guess going back to what I was talking about, I still think being able to learn constantly and adapt to the environment, I guess, would have been the most important lesson for me. As I said, there's always these areas keep evolving. This is not a static environment, it's a highly dynamic environment. You're dealing with a lot of requirements keep coming in. Like sometimes the requirements for technology, especially with DoD, also keep changing with new wars, for example. Although I'm not a fan of wars, but wars push a lot of new technology developments as well. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the only upside. And yeah, and deciding to go in outer space, for example, that needs a lot of work. And if you have a mentality of 10 years ago, you probably won't be able to work in any of these areas today. So keeping up with the requirements and adapting, I guess, is the most important factor for businesses. So.
Is there anything that you would have done differently knowing what you know now if you were to start all over again?
Yeah, I guess one thing that would have done more would have been to create more professional connections. So networking more actively, creating more professional connections, especially in the area that we're working in like aerospace. matters a lot. So I mean, there is a difference that you can be successful with the right connections, with the same capabilities, and you can lose without those connections. So yeah, I would have created more professional connections.
Ah, yes. Oftentimes, when we are starting out, we'll run into roadblocks along the way. Are there really effective ways that you found of working through those roadblocks?
So basically, overcoming these roadblocks basically require like a lot of different things, key strategies. Again, learning adaptability, building a strong network, being able to make the right decisions, and having the right, like basically listening to your customer and things like that, is kind of matters. It's like a multifaceted strategy development. But for me, I think the most important factor was maintaining a clear long-term vision, um, being able to have like a clear vision, having a big picture perspective always enables entrepreneurs, including myself, to make more informed and forward thinking and strategic decisions that would help a lot with going around the roadblocks. So yeah, I mean, having going back to your original objectives always help you to redevelop your steps and basically redevelop solution that work around the roadblocks.
Right, right. How did you develop your vision?
So again, it comes down to my personal experience back, maybe from the time that I was young, being interested in developing new technologies with aerospace applications, always my passion. So part of it comes from my passion, and yeah, I mean, when you like go into market and keep talking to people and talk to DoD, to NASA program managers, for example, you'll get a sense. Like for example, for me, it's important that we can create technologies that have impact for human beings going forward. Like for example, if you can create um, habitable cities in outer space on planets, you might be able to resolve some of the problems that you're dealing with here on ground. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that going after this type of problems have some meaningful impact in the future. So
Okay. If you could give other founders one piece of advice, what would you say?
I think most important thing for a founder probably is just always learn, adapt. The business was basically constantly evolving, and success often depends on the ability to stay informed and remain open to change. So it essentially comes back to adaptability again,
Mm-hmm.
at least from my perspective. So having a growth mindset and seeking knowledge from different sources, and being open and being able to pivot when it's necessary, I guess, would be the most important skill.
Got it. I think oftentimes we are hit with a lot of what is sometimes termed shiny objects. How do you determine when you're pivoting? How do you decide which of those next things or which pivot to make? A lot of times you will receive input from advisors or what have you, and sometimes that advice isn't all headed in the same direction. Sometimes it's headed in opposite directions. How do you decide which, I guess, shiny object? Well, hopefully it's not a shiny object, but hopefully it's a strategy. How do you decide which one to go after?
Yeah, I think depending on your strategy, sometimes you're working in a startup that tries to solve future problems, or basically creating solution for a problem that doesn't exist right now. So you want to focus on that goal. Like for example, right now there's not so many people or advisors who know what to do on Moon, right? So I mean, if your goal is to create new technologies on Moon, So you just go back to your original goal, no matter what different advisors say. Although I would respect like the experience of the experienced people, but you would also want to stick to your original goal. But the other type of vision, I think, would also come from the other type would be basically going back to your customer. Like if you're customer oriented and you have already available customers that you're dealing with, I guess that comes from the customer, right? What customer
Hmm.
wants. Like for example, if you're dealing with some government agency that wants a specific problem to be solved or a specific product, so I mean, you should strategize around that, no matter what the advisor says. But yeah, I mean, depending on the type of business you are in on what level you're working. Like for example, right now we're dealing with a lot of R&D. Part of them, I mean, or most of them are not products yet. Basically, R&D that solves impactful problems of the future. It also it needs I think defining clear goals. So you need to go back to your goals and make sure you're basically following those goals, assuming that you have defined them like in the right way, because there are also some goals that might not be attainable. But I think having the right goals and keeping up with your long-term vision probably always should be helpful.
Absolutely. I want to end with one last question, and that is if you were to make one prediction about the future, what would it be?
Yeah, okay. That's a hard question. So, yeah, predicting future kind of is always uncertain. But one significant trend that is likely to continue is the increasing integration of technology into various aspects of our lives. There is like a lot of new developments in different areas that I'm sure everybody have heard about, like genomics, biotechnology, like I don't know, new transportation technologies, quantum computing, AI, and all of that. So there will be more of all of those, and there'll be um, like people are going to go and use them, integrate them into different aspects of their lives. But I'm the part I'm mostly interested in is the continued growth of autonomous systems that are enabled by AI, artificial intelligence. So in coming years, I think we should anticipate a profound transformation in which autonomy driven by advancements in AI and digital technologies basically become increasingly integral to various aspects of our life. This shift toward autonomy will extend from not just self-driving cars, but you should expect a lot of like self-operating vehicles and a lot of autonomous robots entering day-to-day life of people. Yeah, and that's the future that I'm looking for. Although it'll also create some dilemmas. I mean, people always are asking these questions at this stage as well. Like, what would be the line between like what is acceptable AI, for example? How much of like autonomy these systems should have? So there is always a trade-off between having most capable AIs and autonomy and ethics, and also at the same time keeping up the personal freedoms and personal rights of people. So yeah, I mean, I guess developing a safe autonomous system, considering the ethical aspects, probably going to be a challenge, but that's what I would expect in future.
All exciting possibilities. So, if somebody wanted to learn more about ControlX, what should they do?
We do have a website, although our website might not be very updated. You have an email there. People can send us direct messages. We do also have a LinkedIn page, ControlX, and they can always directly reach out to me. I can provide my email, my initials at controlx.system, MP at controlx.systems. would be happy to engage with new people and maybe develop new capabilities, new cooperation possibilities. So looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here today. And I do want to take just a moment to thank Guideforce for hosting these sessions. To learn more about Guideforce, you can visit guideforce.com. And we'll see you next time on the Startup Leader Show.
Thank you, Lisa.